Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Morning. You sit down, everybody. Come on. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Geoffrey, for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a measure of the resilience of this country that since the vote to leave the EU, and in defiance of all predictions, the economy has grown much faster than the rest of Europe. Unemployment has fallen to the lowest level since 1972. Exports have soared. English football teams have won both the Champions League and the UEFA Cup by beating other English football teams. And inward investment has soared to a record £1.3 trillion. It's almost as if the commercial dynamism of the British people is insulating them from the crisis in our politics. And yet we cannot ignore the morass at Westminster, where parties have entered a yellow box junction, unable to move forward or back, while around the country there is a mood of disillusion, even despair, at our ability to get things done. The longer it goes on, the worse the risk that there will be serious contamination and a real loss of confidence, because the people of this country deserve better from their leaders. They need courage, and they need clarity, and they want a resolution. And that is our mission today. And that is why I'm standing before you, because now is the time to remember our duty to the people and the reasons for the Brexit vote. It wasn't just about democracy, though that was fundamental. It wasn't just about immigration, though people were entirely reasonable in wanting national controls. I remember that campaign vividly, and I think I understood some of the feelings of those who voted to leave. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to feel that they too could be part of the astonishing success of this country. They wanted to feel that their hopes and dreams were as important to the government as the desires and priorities of any metropolitan-style guru or tech king or the head of some FTSE 100 company. And so now is the time to unite this country and unite this society. And we cannot begin that task until we have delivered on the primary request of the people, the big thing that they asked us to do. After 3 years and 2 missed deadlines, we must leave the EU on October the 31st. And we must do better than the current withdrawal agreement that has been rejected 3 times by Parliament. And let me be clear that I am not aiming for a no-deal outcome. I don't think that we will end up with any such thing. But it is only responsible to prepare vigorously and seriously for no deal. Indeed, it is astonishing that anyone could suggest dispensing with that vital tool of negotiation. I think this is a great country, and that we are more than capable of rising to the challenge. And it's only by preparing and raising awareness of what no deal might entail that we will ensure that we do not resort to that option. It's only if we have the guts and the courage to get ready for it that we will carry any conviction in Brussels and get the deal we need. Because they don't want no deal any more than I do. And we will simply not get a result if we give the impression that we want to go on kicking the can down the road with yet more delay. Delay means defeat. Delay means Corbyn. Kick the can again, and we kick the bucket. With every week and month that goes by in which we fail to deliver on our promise, I'm afraid we will further alienate not just our natural supporters, driving them into the arms of insurgent parties, but anyone who believes that politicians should deliver on their promises. The paradox is that we have not allayed the divisions in our society by failing to deliver the outcome which millions voted for. We've not eased the tensions with delay, we've made them worse, and we risk making them worse again. And so when we come up with that better deal, I think there will be a sense of overwhelming relief as Brexit finally leaves the front pages and becomes a debate about how to get the best possible free trade deal in Brussels. And then there will be the chance to concentrate on the Britain that we can create for everyone. It's an extraordinary fact that the United Kingdom is forecast in our lifetimes to go neck and neck with Germany as the largest and most prosperous economy in Europe, with a lead in so many of the cutting-edge industries, tech, academia, battery technology, turbine design, that is enabling us to be world leaders in clean power and environmental protection. And yet, if I may be permitted to use a metaphor based on the internal combustion engine. We are somehow achieving Grand Prix speeds, but without firing on all cylinders. We all know there is a huge gulf in the prosperity between London and the South East, most productive region in the whole of Europe, and the rest of the UK. And so, if we are to respond to that profound message of the Brexit vote, if we are to unite our country and unite our society, then we must fight now for those who feel left behind. We need now to level up, not to neglect our capital, of course not, but to put in the infrastructure that will lift every region. Northern Powerhouse Rail, proper connectivity in the West Midlands. It is absurd that Spain should have 80% coverage of fibre optic broadband against only 7% in this country. Madness that Leeds should be the largest city in Europe with no metro rail system. We must end the injustice of our education funding gap, both in primary and secondary schools, giving young people everywhere the same tools and the same freedom and the same confidence to succeed, and do more to fund our amazing FE colleges that have been too often forgotten. Because it should be our fundamental moral purpose as a government to bridge not just the wealth gap, not just the productivity gap, but the opportunity gap between one part of the UK and another. And I know we can do it. I know we can unite our country and our society, because I've seen and used exactly those tools to help to unite our capital, the greatest city on earth. When I became mayor 11 years ago, we had 4 of the 6 poorest boroughs in the UK. When I left office after 2 terms, we had none of the bottom 20. And although everybody's life expectancy had risen, it was among the poorest quartile that the gains had been fastest. And what was the method by which we brought the city together? We made fantastic investments in affordable mass transit so that people on modest incomes could live near their place of work. We outbuilt Labour with more than 100,000 affordable homes. We massively expanded the London living wage, a policy that was then adopted by the national government. We cut the murder rate by 50%, cut road traffic fatalities by 50%. And when you consider that those calamities fall disproportionately on poorer families, you can see that everything we did was driven by a desire for social justice and promoted that outcome. And yet, of course, at the same time, we defended and championed the businesses and wealth creators who make those investments possible. And there was a long period when I was just about the only politician who was willing to stick up for financial services, even though they produce about £70 billion in tax for our economy. And I did it because that is the symmetry at the heart of modern conservatism. We can fight for the teachers and the nurses and the firemen and the armed service personnel and the police precisely because we are willing to encourage the tech wizards and the shopkeepers and the taxi drivers and, yes, the bankers as well. And we enable the extraordinary success of our private sector with a strong, committed, passionate, well-funded public sector. It's that synergy, that symbiosis, that sizzling syzygy that is so fertile in generating further economic growth. And that is the formula. That is the way we will bridge the opportunity gap and bring the country together, responding to the mighty plea of the majority of our people for fundamental change on the 23rd of June 2016. So that no town, no community, no person feels left behind. And that is the way we will reknit the bonds of this amazing country. And in everything we do, we will seek to strengthen the union of our 4 nations, that invincible quartet, the awesome foursome that makes up the UK, the world's soft power superpower. And I've seen across the world, in our armed forces, in our diplomacy, our sheer cultural impact, how we are so much more than the sum of our parts. Our friends abroad don't think of England or Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland. They think of all the values that are expressed by that union flag: economic and political freedom, democracy, free speech, human rights, a passionate determination to campaign for the protection of the natural world, female education. That's what they know the United Kingdom stands for, and they admire it deeply. And over the last few years, I've seen in our friends the desire for this country to recover its confidence and self-belief. And the curious thing is that very often it's been our friends and partners who have shown more confidence in this country than we have ourselves. It's time to end this debilitating uncertainty, to end the doubts and division with clarity and decision. And that is why I believe I'm the right person to take this country forward. And I'm proud and humbled to have the support of so many of my parliamentary friends and colleagues here today, and indeed representatives of my former team in City Hall. And though I do not for 1 minute underestimate the complexity and challenges that lie ahead, I have long experience of managing real short-term difficulties in the confident expectation of long-term success. I took this city through riots and strikes and all the teething problems of the Olympics, which was actually no picnic, as I remember, and with a team of stars, we brought this city together with new infrastructure, with renewed and relentless emphasis on education and technology. We shrank that opportunity gap. And to sum up my mission in a sentence, what I want to do now, with your help, is to do for the whole country what we did in London, releasing the creative energies of our country and its peoples and healing its divisions. And I will make one final observation. I know the London Labour left. I have studied them and their ways. I know who they are. I know what kind of people. I know their obsessions with strange far-left Latin American caudillos with proto-Marxist views and a curious hostility to free speech. And yet in Jeremy Corbyn we have a man who is far to the left of Ken Livingstone in his nihilistic determination to hike taxes to penal rates, to attack wealth creation and private property, and in his failure, again and again, to extirpate anti-Semitism from his circle. I'm afraid that what he stands for and I'm afraid that he and what he stands for are a real threat to our fundamental values and our way of life. I come to this fight now as a proud Conservative who has campaigned, by the way, in just about every seat in the country. And I believe in the innate decency of our country, in its genius and in its hard-won freedoms. I believe in setting people free by equipping them with the education to achieve their dreams. I believe in the vital symmetry between free market economics and superb public services. And I will do absolutely anything I can within the bounds of the Constitution and the law to prevent the government of the UK from passing into the hands of those who, by their total disdain for wealth creation, their contempt for the normal aspirations of millions to improve their lives, would compromise our ability to fund the NHS and so much else besides. My friends, we cannot let them anywhere near Downing Street. The last time, I would remind you, that I faced an emanation of that cabal, I defeated him when the Conservatives were 17 points behind in London. We can do it again, and we must. We can get Brexit done, and we can win. We can unite our country and our society, and that is why I'm standing to be leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister, because this contest is not chiefly about any one person, or even about the Conservative Party. It is the opening salvo in a battle to restore faith in our democracy, to renew the natural ties of affection that unite the UK, and to protect this country from red-toothed, red-clawed socialism of today's Labour Party. And we're going to do this by articulating a new and inspiring vision for sensible, moderate, modern conservatism. My friends, I ask you now to join me in that great project, and yes, sometimes that great challenge that lies before us. But with your help, and with the help of the British people, we will succeed, and the whole country will win. Thank you very much indeed for your support and for coming together. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm told we're going to have 6 questions from representatives of the media. Well, that's a huge number. And I'm going to go first of all to Laura Koonsberg of the BBC, and then I'm going to go to Beth Rigby. Laura.
Thank you very much. Mr Johnson, you suggested that Brexit would be a straightforward win-win, and actually it's been a chaotic mess. As Foreign Secretary, you offended people at home and abroad. You have a reputation for being cavalier with vital detail, and already in this campaign you're telling some supporters you'll do everything to avoid leaving the EU without a deal, and others that you gladly would do that. It's a simple question. If you want to be Prime Minister, can the country trust you?
Well, yes, of course, Laura. And the answer, I think, perhaps in that great minestrone of observations, was one substantive question, which was which was that one crouton I picked up, which was that you think that I've been somehow inconsistent. I mean, somehow inconsistent, Laura, in saying that I don't want a no-deal outcome, but I think it is right for our great country to prepare for that outcome. And I think what most people understand, is that the best way to avoid a no-deal outcome, the best way to avoid a disorderly Brexit of any kind, is to make the preparations now that will enable us to leave in a managed way if we have to. But above all, if we make the preparations now, we will carry the conviction with our friends and partners that we are indeed able to make such an exit if we really have to, if we are dead, if we are moved, if we have to go down that route, which would be, of course, a last resort, not something that anybody desires as their first option. But if we have to go down that route, then the best way to avoid it is, of course, to prepare for it, and to be absolutely clear to our friends and partners that we're willing to do it. And that is the way that we will get a deal that I think will be sensible in the interests of both sides of the Channel. I want to stress that the team that I hope to build will hit the ground running, and we will engage in the friendliest possible way with our colleagues over the Channel. And I think they will rapidly come to see that they have a new government with a new mandate, a new earnestness, a new determination to get things done, a new optimism and a new confidence about what Britain can do. And I think they will respond to that. And I think there will be a symmetrical enthusiasm on the other side of the Channel about getting this thing done and moving forward. Because it isn't good either for the UK or for our friends and partners to continue with this kind of uncertainty. And so that is why I think it is important to be robust and to be determined and to be committed now to preparations for no deal. And I think that the British people, having been told for so many years that they're incapable, 3 years, that they're incapable of going down that route, will respond to that challenge. They will rise to it, and we will get there. Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you brandish your Brexit credentials, but many of your colleagues worry about your character. Your Foreign Office... Your character. Your character. Your former Foreign Office colleague, Alistair Burt, said your description of the PM's plan as a suicide vest wrapped around Britain was, quote, outrageous, inappropriate and hurtful. He said this language had to stop, but it doesn't stop. You brought shame on your party when you described veiled Muslim women as letterboxes and bank robbers. People who have worked closely with you do not think you're fit to be Prime Minister.
Well, Beth, I'm delighted that many of my former colleagues seem to dissent from that view. But nonetheless, I want to make a general point. You've asked a fair question, Beth, and a good question. I want to make a general point about the way I do things and the language I use. Because of course, occasionally some plaster comes off the ceiling as a result of a phrase I may have used, or indeed as a result of the way that phrase has been wrenched out of context and interpreted by those who wish, for reasons of their own, to caricature my views. But I think it is vital that we as politicians remember that one of the reasons why the public feels alienated now from us all as a breed, politicians, is because too often they feel we are muffling and veiling our language, if I might put it that way. Not speaking as we find, covering everything up in bureaucratic platitudes, when what they want to hear is what we genuinely think. And if sometimes in the course of trying to get across what I genuinely think, I use phrases and language that have caused offence. Of course, I'm sorry for the offence that I've caused, but I will continue to speak as directly as I can, because that is what I think the British public wants to hear. And we get Paul Brand of ITV.
Thank you. In the spirit of this campaign, I'd first like to ask, have you done anything illegal in the whole of your life? And secondly, regardless of the answer to that question, the problem that you do have in this contest, as much as you might refute it, is one of trust, is one of reliability. So may I ask you, do you regret any of the mistakes that you've made in your political and your personal life? And are you saying that you would change as Prime Minister?
Well, have I ever done... Excellent questions. Paul, have I ever done anything illegal? I mean, I cannot swear that I've always observed a top speed limit in this country of 70 miles an hour. I would not want to be put on catechise you closely on your general question about, this is the key issue here. Do I do what I promise I'm going to do as a politician? Yes. That is the issue, that's the issue that you legitimately raise, Paul. And the answer to that is yes. You look at what we did in City Hall. We said we would do X, we ended up doing X plus 10. I mean, virtually every single, we said that we'd do 100,000 homes, and we did slightly more. Perhaps not a huge number more, but slightly more. I promised to stop knife crime, which was out of control, or to cut knife crime. And you remember what was happening 11 years ago or so when I was first, and I see veterans of that campaign, I'm proud to say, here in the front. It was terrible. We had kids losing their lives in our city at a rate of 28, 30 a year. Teenagers were being stabbed to death in London. We had to take some very tough decisions. And I'm absolutely delighted that two of my former deputy mayors who were intrinsically involved in that campaign, James Cleverly and Kit Malthouse, are both now on our team today. And they did an extraordinary job. They did an absolutely extraordinary job. Kit had to take some very, very difficult decisions about encouraging the police to go down Operation Blunt 2, which you remember involved taking about 11,000 knives off the streets of London, saving who knows how many lives of kids, avoiding heaven knows how much grief and misery for the families of those young people. And he did it, we did it, with Stop and Search. And I'm delighted to say that the government is now putting back the emphasis on stop and search in our towns and in our cities, because I believe there's frankly nothing kinder or more loving than that you can do. If you see a young kid coming down the streets who may be carrying a knife, than to ask him to turn out, or her, well, almost invariably him, to turn out his pockets and produce that knife. That is not discriminatory. That is a kind, compassionate, loving thing to do. And it worked. And it worked. And we ended up, as I said just now, we ended up cutting serious youth violence by, I think, 32%. Knife crime went down. The murder rate, as I said, went down 50%. And there was a long period in which we had the murder rate in London running at or under about 100 a year, which is an astonishing thing for a city of almost 9 million. Absolutely astonishing thing. And that was because of the work of the police. And I say one thing about the way I'm going to campaign and the way I hope to be Prime Minister. I believe that as a leader of great public services, it is your job not just to be the chief consumer, not just to hold them to account, but also to recognise that you are in some sense their leader and their champion. And we should get behind our police, and we should support them. And by the way, we should fund them properly, because they do a fantastic job. I'm going to go to Jason Groves of the Daily Mail. Is he here?
Thank you. Can we sort out this drugs question, which seems to have bedeviled this campaign so far? You told GQ some years ago now, when asked whether you'd taken cocaine, yes, I tried it at university, and I remember it vividly, and asked whether the drug had actually gone up your nose. You said, yes, it must have done, but it didn't do much for me. Were you telling the truth then, and do you regret the fact that you took a Class A drug?
Well, I think the canonical account of this event when I was 19 has appeared many, many times, and I think what most people in this country really want us to focus on in this campaign, if I may say so, is what we can do for them and what our plans are for this great country of ours. And I think that the prospectus that I'm setting out this morning of solid modern conservatism, of a one-nation vision, championing the wealth-creating sector of our country, extolling the merits, and I don't think we've done it enough over the last few years, extolling the merits of free market capitalism. Yes, I'm going to use that word. Extolling the merits of free market capitalism because we believe that that is the way to support the poorest and the neediest in society. That is at the core of what we're trying to do. That is a message that I don't think people have heard enough in the last few years. I'm absolutely determined to make it the core of my campaign, and all the rest of it, frankly, is, I think, in danger of blowing us off track. Let's focus on what conservatism is. Let's focus what conservatives can do. That is what the public want to hear. And what they want to hear also is, can we find a leader now who can beat Jeremy Corbyn and deliver a sensible Brexit that fights off the threat from the insurgent Brexit party? And I have to say that that is the job that I believe I'm best suited to do today. So that's where I think the public want us to direct our energies. I'm going to go now to George Barker of the Financial Times, or mon journal préféré, as Jacques Delors used to say.
Thank you. I'm sure he did. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I just wondered if I could ask you, you mentioned earlier about some of your phraseology has a tendency to blow the plaster off the ceilings. Can I ask you, I won't use the word because this press conference is being broadcast live, but you famously said F business. I wonder what you would say to FT readers who are concerned that that off-the-cuff comment might turn out to be official policy should you become Prime Minister. What exactly did you mean when you said F business?
Well, George, first of all, I want to say I genuinely do love the Financial Times, and I have your app, and I read your work literally every day. Everybody, I think, if you look at my record as a campaigner, as a politician, I don't think there is anybody in the modern Conservative Party who can be honestly said to have done more to stick up for business, even in the toughest of times. And I just, you know, it was after the crash. I remember vividly there was an absolute feeding frenzy in 2008. There was a feeding frenzy on financial services in London. Everybody said that that, you know, we should allow the bankers all to depart to Zurich and New York and Singapore and all the rest of it, and good riddance. And I thought that was a disastrous approach. And our fantastic city and this UK economy benefits from hard-working people. And they're not all, by the way, on massive incomes in financial services. Don't forget that. There are probably 500,000 people in this city who depend on financial services, but they're not all on massive incomes. Financial services put bread on the table for people on modest incomes across London, across the UK. And I will stick up for them. I will stick up for every business in this country. And when I was Foreign Secretary, I might say, I spent much of my time trying to sell this or that. I'm glad to see my friend Michael Fallon there, because he and I will know what it's like flying around the world. One of the most important things you have to do as a government minister, and pretty and Ian, others will know, you have to sell the UK abroad. And I can tell you that if I'm lucky enough to become our leader and Prime Minister, there will be no more enthusiastic, committed champion and salesperson, sort of take of accuracy, salesman of the UK. That is the mission. Last question goes to Heather Stewart of The Guardian.
Hello. You've promised against day to exit the EU on the 31st of October, with or without a deal. But Brussels may not be as susceptible to your charms as you hope, and MPs are already moving to block a no-deal exit. What then? And will you commit now to resign if you fail to meet that 31st of October deadline?
I understand. Of course I understand that colleagues in Parliament have very strong views, but our job is to engage with everybody and just to point out that the real existential threat that I now think faces both major parties if we fail to get this thing done. And I think that in the end, maturity and a sense of duty will prevail, and I think it will be very difficult in the end for colleagues in Parliament to obstruct the will of the people and simply to block Brexit. Because, you know, we asked the people, we put the question out to them, and in a sense it was absolutely right to do so, because the issue of membership of the European Union does go fundamentally to people's sense of what their future is, what their identity is, where they see themselves in the future. It was right to ask the British people. They returned a very clear answer by a substantial majority. Parliament voted overwhelmingly to trigger Article 50 and get this thing done. I think that if we now block it, as collectively as parliamentarians, we will reap the whirlwind, and we will face mortal retribution from the electorate. So I just say to our friends and colleagues, let's come together and get this thing done. And in Brussels, you know, they will have a government, as I say, that will be inspired with a new vigour, a new confidence, and new optimism about what we can do, but also total conviction about the way forward and how to get it done. And I think that we will get results. I'm not going to pretend to you now that everything will be plain sailing. There will be difficulties and there may be bumps in the road, but my team will hit the ground running. We will have a fantastic team, and we will work flat out between now and October the 31st, and I think we will get the result that the country needs. A sensible, orderly Brexit that allows this country to flourish as a great independent nation, but also that builds a new partnership with our friends across the Channel. If I think there's been one failing in our, there have been several, but there's been one failing I'd single out in the last 3 years, is we haven't made enough of that future partnership and the benefits that it will bring to both sides of the Channel. And there hasn't been enough about what we can do to promote a new sense of Europeanism and a new conservative sense of Europeanism. And we were the party that took the UK into what was then the common market. It then evolved in a way that was very, very much against what had been initially promised to the people. But we can still have a fantastic, intense, intimate relationship with our friends and partners overseas. Of course we can. And we should do that. And one of the tragedies of our 45 years, or however long it is now, of membership, is that some of the bilateral relations have actually not developed in the way that they could have done. And teaching of French, German in our schools has actually declined, paradoxically, rather than increased. Now's the time, not just to alter to come out of the European Union, but actually to intensify our trading relationships, our friendships, our partnerships with those European nations. And we can do that. And that should be the ambition of Conservatives as well. Anyway, folks, I'm going to thank you very much for your time. And thank you.
Boris Johnson launching his leadership campaign.